Hello and welcome to part 1 of the Automation Winter Premium Car Challenge, where today I'm just going to be going over the scoring and judging each car in automation. So yeah, let's get on with it. So our first car from Duracer X is Chester. It's a rather plain looking car in my opinion, visually. The front, it has some nice chrome going on, but from the sides and back it's all very basic, although the chrome striping here is a nice touch. The headlights, again in my opinion, are a bit too modern for this. They look more like something you'd see on a 2010s car, just because of the sort of LED look, the sort of smooth and fancy looking glass. Mechanically, this car I think has quite a strong engine here, a big V8 4.8 litres. That's rather lazy and very drivable. It's got a nice drop off there and it's very quiet. It's matching some of the turbo cars in terms of loudness, so it's rather impressive in that regard. A bit of leftover potential here, not totally optimised, but yeah, the chassis really holds it back. It uses a ladder chassis, which means that it's just severely limited in terms of safety, especially, but yeah, just not having it because it has loads of potential left in it. Plenty of space within the rules, but yeah, it just doesn't fill it up, which is a bit of a shame. Next, from Prince of All Saiyans, we have the Ukyo Snow Kart. I'm just going to call it the Snow Kart because I can't pronounce that first part properly. Anyway, as you can see, it's very much not a premium car. It's, I don't know, it's a weird looking, angry sort of thing. It doesn't look really 70s or premium car, or even really anything, but definitely sort of aimed down setting a good time in BeamNG, and hopefully will be good to drive. Interestingly, it's rear-engined, which should hopefully be good for traction. Not that I think it'll have too much of an issue, since it's got no low-down power, and it's only got 81 horsepower overall. So, potentially, it's not going to have too many issues. I am worried that it is making too much power in the high end and it's too peaky, which could cause some issues for me. But otherwise, it's a fairly standard racing car with a couple of weird choices. Chunky off-road tyres is going to be interesting on the snow. I'm not quite sure if that will be the best compound. I have heard some things about BeamNG being a bit strange with tyre compound. And also, it's got 5 seats for some reason, and also really nice interior despite it having zero comfort. I guess that's for prestige reasons, but still, it's strange. And also, it has drum brakes. Amazingly, zero brake fade with drums, which is quite impressive. And I suppose, yeah, if you don't need anything better, why bother? From Tank Catapult, we have Lorient, which is a rather plain looking car, and is sort of messy in a lot of ways. It has all the right fixtures, I'd say, at least for a very basic car, but the way that it's executed is very messy. For example, the lack of chrome around the lights I don't think really works, and the indicators being mounted so low and having really clear and transparent glass, and then things like this this grille not really lining up or anything. There's this weird gap here, which I'm personally not a fan of. Otherwise, roof racks are a nice touch. Wire wheels maybe a bit late now in the 70s, and yeah, the badging is really the only thing saving the rear end. That and this very small boot release or keyhole or something. Otherwise, incredibly plain on the back. It's a front-wheel drive car, which would normally make me worry about understeer, but in this, not really an issue, considering how low power it is. 108 horsepower from a 2.5 litre inline 4, and this engine's very bizarre. Lots of it make me think it's trying to be sporty, but other things like the lack of power and the really low cam profile, considering the other components, make me think that it's, yeah, trying to be normal. But then you've got things like a performance intake and kind of rich fuel mixture, and then 2 straight-through mufflers and a tubular header. It's these weird sort of, you know, components that don't really go together. usually. The engine's also got quite a lot of potential left in it, and also it can still rev a bit further. I'd say really cutting off power quite early there. Or, you know, if nothing else, the components are quite overdone, so in theory you could get away with a bit less, or a bit of negative quality, or even just upping stroke and lowering bore to reduce the weight. Don't know, just my opinion. Interestingly, the back brakes are stronger than the tyre grip, but the front brakes aren't, which usually is the opposite of what you want. Usually you want the front brakes to lock up and the rears to keep gripping, so that you have some control, so that basically you just keep going in a straight line rather than spin when braking hard. I've been told that in the snow you want a setup like this for performance driving at least, because that helps the front end get turned in more. I'm not sure, we're going to have to see about that. Then finally, the comfort for this car is surprisingly low, considering what it's supposed to be, a big comfortable car, and it doesn't seem to really be focusing on going quickly in BeamNG. It just has an incredibly low comfort, which, yeah, is probably because of this really stiff suspension setup that and things like standard springs, which don't really belong on a comfort car. From the almighty Twingo, we have the Major Emperor GTP. I'm just going to call it the Emperor because I struggle to pronounce Major. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Anyway, this is probably the first more traditional luxury car, or luxury barge sort of thing. The other cars before, not really. But yeah, big saloon car with sort of a winter package thing going on. It's I quite like the fog lights and the little yellow fog lights down below. Overall, it's a decent design. I just think it's kind of empty in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's very little going on at the back, and at the side, I mean, beyond the door handles and the indicator there, there's not really a lot going on. Maybe some chrome and plastic to match the bumpers or something would help there. But otherwise, pretty decent design. Interestingly, this car doesn't use any double wishbones on the chassis. It is all independent suspension, but interestingly, yeah, no double wishbones unlike a lot of entries. The engine's a big 3-litre V6, and thanks to, I assume, the overhead cam, 3 valves, doesn't use any emission equipment at all. No hyperneutectic cast or two-way cat. Assume just some clever tuning with the fuel mixture, and anything else? Although it doesn't really seem to have anything that stands out, so I'm not quite sure how they've managed that, but yeah, it's way under on the rules. I guess, yeah, just good engine choices. The rest of the car is all fairly standard stuff, nothing too high-end on it actually, apart from the suspension, which is hydropneumatic, going very fancy and comfortable, but also, I guess, focusing on off-road a bit, since I believe that's the best suspension type for off-roading. From Kamikaze Folks, we have the Socco Chamonix, I think is how you pronounce that. It's a French name. Again, I apologise for being unable to pronounce complex names or anything that isn't just obvious English. Anyway, yeah, this car is beautiful. A very 70s, more of a European style, rather than some of the more American designs we've had. But yeah, this gets a full 20 out of 20 for styling. Just the detail, things like these taillights here, which are multiple ones overlapped to get that effect, and also this badge here, lots of clever things, and this just stripe that goes around the entire car. I've just noticed they integrated the keyhole there into the stripe. That's very nice. Yeah, there's quite a lot of detail and definitely very high effort, so it gets the 20 out of 20 in my opinion. Not the only car that did, but for this being the best sort of European style luxury or premium car, yeah, I had to give this the points there. Mechanically, this reminds me a lot of that the 1970s Citroen SM. Had a Maserati V6 in it, and was actually quite fast for the era, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is very similar. 180 horsepower, 2.7 litre, yeah, V6, and yeah, very fast and definitely very performance setup. Though still has a reverse flow muffler on it. Yeah, everything about this car really set up to be performance. Front wheel drive like the SM is, I believe. Longitudinal front wheel drive at that, actually. And yeah, one of the fastest cars we've had here, definitely one of the quickest accelerating. And tyres not actually that wide. Interestingly, this has no lift on the back, thanks to a very high rear wing angle that the lip on the back doing everything it can to keep those back wheels from lifting. And then a fairly sporty suspension setup. Yeah, possibly a bit too soft on the back there. You can see that it's not really lining up, but yeah, overall a very good and very sporty car. Bit of positive camber on the back though, that's a bit strange. Anyway, yeah, beautiful car, very sporty, hopefully fun to drive in Beam. From T Passotti, we have the Tempest 370 Deluxe, which I think it's quite nice design, but only really from a distance. Where you have things like this chrome stripe, and yeah, so the shape in general, it's not a bad looking car, but it's sort of things like I don't think the grille and the sort of headlights range really go together, since this is quite square and that's sort of curved around the edges. And things like the wheels stick out the arches, and again, just it seems there's a lot of good ideas going on here. Definitely has potential, but I just think execution is maybe a little lacking. Although even up close in the details, things like this sort of exhaust serrain there is very cool. Just a nice little detail there, and the headlight wipers, which again I approve of. But yeah, has potential, just needs to be neatened up a bit, in my opinion. This engine's a big dual overhead cam inline 6, and bizarrely has an aluminium block but cast iron head. Usually you want to go the other way round, since you get a bit of extra reliability over aluminium on both, but can reduce a bit of weight. Here is sort of the worst in terms of reliability. Yeah, poor reliability and not exactly much in the way of weight saving. I mean, I suppose this is quite a big gain over a cast iron block, but if we do that, in fact, reliability improves. So, don't know, maybe you could have put a bit of negative quality there. Anyway, rest of the engine is fairly standard, and nice drivable torque curve there, which is very good. But yeah, do you really need that +3 on the fuel system? You could have helped yourself a lot better in other ways. Anyway, again, fairly sporty setup, only a bit slower than the last car we had. Mismatched tyre sizes and quite wide on the back, which does give me a bit of confidence on the ice. It should grip quite nicely, although potentially having such narrow front tyres compared to the back ones could lead to a bit of understeer. We'll have to see. Hydro pneumatic suspension and quite a lot of camber, and for a luxury car, a lot of quite a stiff rear sway bar, or sway bars in general, giving it a very low roll angle for a sort of premium car. I mean, the snow car earlier had something like under 2 degrees, I think, but yeah, that was a race car, whereas this it really isn't. So be interesting to see. Hopefully it'll drive nice because of that, but we'll have to wait and see. From Z Chemise, we have the Albatross Oakland, which visually is a very clean looking car. It does look fairly 70s. It does look the part of a late 70s sort of American luxury car. It's just overall very plain looking. There's not a lot going on with it other than this chrome stripe going around the car. It's just sort of empty everywhere. There's not a lot in terms of little details around it or anything. So yeah, it's not ugly. I wouldn't call it pretty, but it's not an ugly car or bad looking in any way. It's just sort of, yeah, bland, I guess. Anyway, unlike an American 70s car, it's rather high-tech. Double wishbone suspension front and rear, and an inline-6 with dual overhead cam 4 valve. So it seems more like a Japanese sports car, something in the sort of Skyline GTRs of the era, than a American style thing. Also featuring forged internals to sort of help it take the revs. Although, yeah, thanks to a rather high stroke, yeah, almost 100 millimeters. Well, okay, well, maybe not almost, but yeah, it is quite high, nevertheless. Yeah, it does mean that even with the forged internals, it's not revving that high. No surprise, since it's sort of American in 70s, that it's front-wheel drive with 3-speed automatic. Manual lock is an interesting choice. I will be using the manual lockers on the cars to help me if I think it'll give me a time advantage. I have been told that some cars will spit their wheels off using the manual locker, so I'll see. If it causes me issues, then I'll take it off. Anyway, tyres are quite wide, 245s. I think that's matching the car I made actually, which was a bit unrealistic, I'll be honest, but you know, makes it drive well. There's no rules against it. And yeah, a very similar sort of ice braking setup to the what was it, Lorient by Tank Catapult. Interior is actually a bit cheap, only using a standard 8-track instead of something premium. I suppose going for a bit cheaper interior and hopefully scoring some points in price. It is actually very cheap, on the cheaper end of the spectrum, so we'll have to see how that does in the final scoring. From Camel Factor shampoo, we have the Camel Factor shampoo. This, well, as you can see again, I assume trying to go for the race car setup like the Snow Kart, actually features quite a lot of similar bits and pieces to the Snow Kart. For example, having one sway bar set to 10,000 and another set to 0, very cheap suspension, and chunky off-road tyres. And then engine-wise, features a 90-degree V6, 5.6 litres. I assume, yeah, thinking about it, 90 degrees V6, probably because of height restrictions, if anything. I was kind of wondering why that was, but yeah, that probably makes the most sense. Pushrod heads though, to I guess keep it compact and allow them to use such a big engine. But yeah, very flat cam profile, making it not actually anywhere close to the most powerful engine here, despite the capacity. And yeah, overall actually a fairly conservative engine, apart from like performance intake. And only a single baffled muffler, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, overall very basic car, not a lot to it, apart from some very overpowered brakes. I have a feeling there's going to be many problems when it comes to me braking here, and I just lock everything up. And again, no comfort, although no durability or sportiness either. Although it does have quite a fancy interior weighing it down, and 5 seats. Becoming the third car to have zero comfort is the Owens Kasumi by Yeshua Man 1983. Yeah, again, chunky off-road tyres, sway bar set to 10,000, another to 0, and then a very fancy interior, but no comfort. Bit bizarre. Very cartoonish proportions, the massive wheels and the sort of front morphed out like that. Makes it look a bit like a slightly cartoonish Lada, which is a bit bizarre. Underneath, it has a solid axle coil front suspension, but semi-trailing arm rear, which is sort of the backwards way to go about it. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. But yeah, that's potentially going to cause handling issues, since no front camber, and also it'll have to ride quite high because the solid axle suspension's under the engine. But anyway, yeah, a decently big V6 with a fairly flat torque curve. Almost looks a bit like it's got VVT or something there, with the bit of a dip and then rise again in torque. Slight crank stress, but nothing too major. And yeah, again, a very bizarre sporty setup, but not a lot of power made from it. And then some very weak actual brakes, but massive in size, and I suppose decently sporty pads. So the brakes are quite powerful versus grip. It'll be interesting to see how that stops. And then very stiff suspension. Probably the main reason why, yeah, comfort's at 0. In fact, let's check quickly. Comfort and, yeah, suspension tuning minus 63.5%. From Red, we have the LaCroix Mysteri 3.5 Aero. I'm just going to call it the, I think LaCroix is pronounced right. Probably. If not, that's how I'm pronouncing it, and you're going to have to deal with it. Anyway, yeah, this car's interesting. It's very nicely done, very detailed, but I just don't think bits of it work. Like the front is quite curvy. You've got this grille down here that's a big curve and also makes it look like it has a smile with its front teeth sticking out. But yeah, the curved lights and stuff versus the very square and blocky rear, and even things like the door handles and areas are kind of square versus other options you can have. It just looks a bit off to me. The front almost looks a bit too cartoonish for my liking, at least, compared to the rest of the car. So yeah, anyway, the engine is an inline-six, nice and smooth, I suppose, featuring mechanical fuel injection. And again, no emissions equipment. In fact, it's got forged pistons, which, if I remember correctly, actually hurt your emissions. So that's rather impressive, and I suppose just showing the power of fuel injection if you can afford the engineering time, which I suppose isn't too bad there. 2 straight-through mufflers and tubular headers, so going for a bit of a sportier vibe. And I suppose, yeah, it's making a fair amount of power. Possibly over-revving a bit, I don't know. I suppose if it's a manual I can just change up a bit earlier if I do go too much, and it is a manual 4-speed. 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, an automatic locker to help me grip, and then mismatched tyres, which I don't know, you can save a bit of money by having them equal size and then just using camber to use it. Speaking of camber, yeah, positive camber front and rear, and then very stiff sway bars. That's a bizarre setup. I'm not sure why you'd really ever have positive camber front and rear. You may as well just use negative 0.5 then, or just adjust it slightly, since that's just taking away grip. But I don't know, maybe that's some weird BeamNG setup. Anyway, the car has a bit of negative quality in places, drivetrain and wheels especially, and a bit then on body and fixture. I don't believe the engine has any though, no. All fine there. From Z2 BBGR, we have the SBA CDX CD2 2.0, I guess. Yeah, visually, this car's got a very nice and detailed rear. I really love this sort of almost vinyl roof effect it's got going on, which is proper 70s styling. It's very nice and detailed, this sort of indent thing on the back, and then the badge surround. It's all very nice. And again on the side, the nice bit of trim goes quite nicely. Plastic and chrome, very 70s thing. Although not a lot of plastic actually anywhere else on the car, which does kind of make it look out of place. But then the front is just so plain. I did talk to the creator of this car, because when I imported it I had an issue with mods, but they said it was fine. Which, yeah, just the lack of any of these indicators is a bit odd, although this is a 2-piece light there. But then just nothing down here or anything. It seems a bit weird to me that it would be like that. This car is quite a small engine, an all aluminium 2-litre inline 4. Only 2 litres too, so one of the smaller engines of this competition. And yeah, all aluminium obviously brings down reliability actually quite far, to sub 40. Which is interesting, and yeah, for some reason it has forged pistons, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Forged crank is especially unnecessary, but like, yeah, it's only revving to 5,700, while the pistons and conrod can go up to over 7,000, the crank almost goes up to 8,000, so that's seriously overkill. And performance intake, again, is a little odd, because it's got 2 reverse flows for maximum quietness, so I just don't really understand why you'd bother having the performance intake then. may as well just like try and go max quiet and then possibly boost the power in some other way. Thanks to low power, 0 to 60 is in over 11 seconds. Which, even with a 5-speed, yeah, that's quite poor. For a premium car challenge at least, in my opinion. Then safety, advanced 60s instead of advanced 70s is a bit of a strange cost cut there. Don't get why you wouldn't just go with 70s considering there is not really any disadvantage. Helps with safety a lot and there's only a slight cost increase. So I don't know what that's about. And then dampers potentially a bit soft. Like comfort of only 95 there is possibly a bit too low. But we'll have to see how it stacks up against the rest of the cars. From Naya 8 we have the bus, which, yeah, doesn't really look anything like a 70s premium car. It's got bits of chrome around it, but even ignoring the fact that it's not really a premium car and the massive wing and stuff, yeah, it's just not, it's not really a 70s car. If the model wasn't a 77, I could believe potentially that it's a 70, sort of a model that's kept on going like the camper van or something, but as it stands, no, it just doesn't work. Interestingly, it is rear-engined, so should have lots of grip, along with some massive rear tyres, 345s, which should in theory give it a lot of grip. In fact, 0% wheel spin sort of proves that it does. And it does have a lot of power, a Boxer 6, 4 litres with 196 horsepower, so it's definitely not lacking in power, but yeah, it is quite a big and heavy car, so that could potentially hurt it. Though a very reliable engine, 58, that's very good for the 70s, I suppose just thanks to mechanical fuel injection. This car is one of the more comfortable cars, and one of the safest, and is the most reliable car here. Brakes do struggle to stop it a bit thanks to a very low pad type. Again, could just be setting up cars for the snow, I don't know. And then yeah, that rear wing is coming to use, giving us 25 kilograms of downforce. Not that that really does much on top of the 1,612 kilograms it's already got. Also 6 seats with luxury interior, because why not, I suppose. And no sway bars, and quite soft dampers, so lots of roll angle. This could be scary to drive. From Armour Motors we have the Armour Briar Brougham? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, I'm just going to call it the Briar. Anyway, yeah, this was my other pick for the best styled car here. Also got 20 out of 20. Purely because, well, it's sort of, I couldn't decide between the two cars, and this one has a lot more of an American style to it. So, yeah, I also picked this. Just the detail to it, things like using a vent in the grille as sort of part of the badge, I thought was a really clever idea. And yeah, the just all around it, they're sort of adding a bit in the centre of the grille and chroming out the entire front. It's all very well done, a lot of care put into this design, and yeah, that's why it got so many points. Interestingly, this car uses a light truck monocoque, which not quite sure why. But well, I took a look at it and I assume it was for safety and a slight reliability bonus. Possibly due to cost as well. Although it is only slightly up in engineering time. But yeah, looking at the difference, like comfort and prestige just helped out a lot, and it's only a slight safety bonus and reliability. Although considering how low the reliability on this car is, yeah, maybe that does help a bit. But yeah, a bit of a strange choice in my opinion. Anyway, engine is a big and quite advanced overhead cam V8. Producing 213 horsepower, which does make it, I believe, the second most powerful car here. Which is saying something about the power figures we're getting, unless, you know, the first car's an outlier. isn't really. It's not that much more powerful. But yeah, overall front-wheel drive. Interestingly, it has wider front tyres than rear. I suppose to make it a bit more oversteery, but that could lead to some slightly scary handling. We'll have to see. From the real Emile, we have the Saint Salmonella crossover. I suppose a sort of homage to the AMC Eagle, but the sort of luxury part about it makes me think more Lamborghini LM002. Yeah, a big sort of rugged off-roader that also has luxury parts, I suppose, was the idea. Although, yeah, it doesn't really seem to be an off-roader, or a pure off-roader. If we take a look at it, I mean, while the visuals, well, it's not the prettiest looking thing, is it? The plastic, and yeah, overall the back looks very messy. Lack of chrome and stuff, though, do make it look very sort of more of a off-roader than anything else. If we take a look at it, it's double wishbone front suspension and stuff, which doesn't really help off-roading. The engine itself, a pretty big V6. It's actually been brought down a bit in the variant capacity, interestingly. But yeah, it's really under-revved. I have no idea why it's using forged components, considering it's only revved to 5,000 RPM. And it's got quite a flat torque curve, so I assume it can go a lot higher without really... Yeah, you can definitely take it a bit further at least. So I don't know, unless like going for ultimate reliability there. But that just hurts performance in my opinion. Doing that. No mufflers for some reason. I guess they thought two-way catalytic converter would be quiet enough. It does have a standard intake, so yeah. 60 loudness. At least it won't get a sportiness penalty. I don't know. And then yeah, front wheel drive. With very short gearing, although it's all in the top end, so no wheel spin. First gear in fact 58 miles an hour. So that's quite long. And then yeah, chunky off-road tyres, definitely going for a bit more of a utility feel. It does have a phonograph though, which, don't know, style points I guess. And then, yeah, everything, well, actually quite stiff sway bars, so sort of the opposite of off-roadiness. And then, yeah, very strange suspension setup. From Racer 126 we have the Geschenk Calmado. This, yeah, a very 70s looking thing, very much a European sort of sports car look. A very nice mix of plastic and chrome, I think, around it. Maybe a bit more plastic than chrome, since this is late 70s, wouldn't have hurted. A very good looking car, that's for sure. Plus I do like the yellow fog lights, so yeah, anything with yellow fog lights is good in my book. Interestingly, the chassis does seem to be, well, quite cheap. Ladder chassis and then solid axle leaf. Supposed to bring costs down a bit, maybe just realism. Whatever the case is, yeah, not great for this challenge. Decently big V8, again cast iron, and yeah, quite a low revving and not very powerful engine, but should be decently drivable and very quiet. Thanks to a weight of 1,500 kilograms, probably because of the ladder chassis and the fact it's convertible. Yeah, it's top speed of 110 and 0 to 60 in 12.2 seconds. Yeah, not good. Interestingly, it's got 5 seats. Not what I would have expected from a convertible. But, don't know, fair enough, whatever. And then very cheap suspension, not even gas monotube to help with comfort a bit. Finally, the front brakes seem very overbuilt. 3 piston vented discs up front, but then only drums on the back is, yeah, I mean, whatever works, but I kind of feel like a 2 piston and then much bigger pads, or even just adjusting the brake bias a bit to help it, would have been a better choice. From Chipskate, we have the Arai Montreal 2900i, sort of BMW inspired car in my opinion. It's got a sort of almost kidney style up front. Again, a very pretty car though. Quite a lot of detail added in. Yeah, overall decent looking. Yeah, plenty of detail in terms of the rear light cluster and the front grille. The engine is a inline 6, only a 2.9 litre, well, sort of halfway between a 2.9 and 2.8, but yeah, very small for this challenge, at least compared to some of the other cars of its size, but fair amount of power for it, and mechanical fuel injection, so a very reliable engine, although it's running really rich. Definitely trying to improve throttle response there, and give it a bit of go, I suppose. Meanwhile, the rest of the car isn't particularly outstanding in any way or anything particularly of note. It's all just a fairly standard setup, competently made, but I know nothing about it or the stats really scream outstanding, apart from safety. Actually, that's quite good. And I suppose reliability, yeah, thanks to that mechanical fuel injection. From El Menduco, we have the Bulanga Trapeze 2.8 DL. It's a very detailed car, I'll give it that. It's got quite nice details in terms of the indicators and reflector. I actually quite like that, the way they've made a difference there. And yeah, the chrome and the vinyl look and stuff like the hinges and the writing on the back, it's all very nice, including the accent on the trapeze. Yeah, it's all very nicely done, but I just don't think it's a very pretty car. I don't know, it's just sort of stuff like the back end being sort of a massive overhang and sticking out quite far, I don't think works, and just not nice to look at despite the details, in my opinion. Interestingly, this uses an all aluminium Boxer 6. I don't think we've really had any other all aluminium engines in this challenge. Maybe we've had one other, I can't remember now. But yeah, gives it a nice, fairly light engine, which it sort of needs to be considering the Boxer 6 is one of the heavier engine types in this game. Front wheel drive, and it is decently fast, but nothing else too notable about this car. It's, again, yeah, decently made car. Maybe not quite as good as the last one though. From Kurfkin, we have the Calculus Lux Sport, a sort of more standard family car looking thing. Big land yacht, luxury wagon, I suppose. Styling wise, it's not a looker. The sort of weird tacked on chrome bumper on the already big plastic bumpers there look a bit strange, and yeah, overall it's just not very pretty looking. But yeah, it sort of looks like it was over designed. There's too much going on, in my opinion, with like the decals and then these little badges over it. Also turbo badge, we'll get to that later. Yeah, the chrome strips on the roof, I suppose, to protect it if you put anything on the roof rack there, I do quite like. And yeah, it does have all the right parts, I just don't think it's done in or well executed, in my opinion. Now, the engine, as the badge hinted, is a turbocharged inline 6. Con rods and pistons are slightly over-revved. Maybe bring the red line back just 100 RPM just to stop that happening. But yeah, it's got a decent turbocharger setup, fairly low lag thanks to the inline 6, even for the 70s turbo tech, which is terrible. It's not until 1980 that ball bearings unlock, so yeah, dealing with lag is quite hard. Obviously the turbocharger does harm reliability quite a lot, as does this, the stress on the engine. But yeah, overall quite good, and that turbocharger helps in lots of ways for this challenge. First of all, brings down the loudness, which in turn helps the comfort, but also because in the early years, turbochargers add lots of prestige, because this has a prestige of 44.4. Not something you'd expect from a wagon, but in fact if we go detail one, yeah, 20% almost extra prestige thanks to the turbochargers. Otherwise it's a fairly standard land yacht in terms of setup. Nothing too crazy there, although minus 15 on aero, because why not, I guess. And yeah, the turbocharger you can see there hurting reliability. From OME we have this, the Stelvio Berlinetta Speciale. It's a very pretty car, I'll give it that, and very well designed, if the fixtures will just load properly. Yeah, incredibly detailed, a very good looking car. It's not a premium car though, so I can't give it high points for styling. It doesn't fit what the goal of this challenge was, or the way I'm judging styling. So as much as I want to give it points for styling, I can't. But yeah, incredibly well done, the stripes and the intricate grille designs there. I think this idea has potential on another body. If it was maybe something a bit bigger, a bigger luxury car, even the Austin Princess body, I think this sort of idea could work. Maybe add a bit more chrome or something, give it a almost like homologation sort of special look. I think that could make sense, but here on the Fiat 126 body it just doesn't work at all. Under the bonnet it has a 2.7 litre V8, because why not, with 123 horsepower, revving fairly low, thanks to, well, actually it does have forged pistons, just a high stroke I suppose, and loads of negative quality there. Yeah, it feels like it could rev a bit further there. It's like, because it's quite flat there, cutting off power maybe a bit early. But yeah, decently quiet for a naturally aspirated engine. And yeah, front wheel drive. So despite what all the cooling at the back says, no, not rear engined, which makes that vent there a bit strange. But okay. No, we'll just call it a twin engine. It's actually just got two inline fours in either end. But yeah, semi-slick tyres, and they are decently high profile. So yeah, 50 profile. But yeah, lots of the options here sort of scream race car to me. Vented discs, 3 pistons, that's very race car, and the semi-slick tyres, along with a decent amount of downforce for, you know, such a light car. Quite a lot of wing angle and stuff. But then things like the interior, it's rather luxurious and stuff. So I don't know, I think, yeah, the idea isn't a bad one, making a sort of homologation Group 4 car type thing, but just for this body, I think if it was something maybe a bit bigger, something more like a BMW type thing, or Audi, or Volvo even, like a 242 or something, it could work, but something like this small, yeah, not really for this challenge. Then from Trent 445 we have the Rally X Mark III, or Rally Cross, I guess. I've only just realised that. Yeah, anyway, interesting looking thing. It's got all the right things. It's got all the right lights and stuff in places, but just doesn't really look like a 70s car at all. The lights, way too modern, and lack of bumpers on the front and rear. Yeah, it's more, I don't know, looks almost a bit like a modern car that's been made to look kind of retro. At least I think so. Chassis wise, light truck monocoque, again, which is a bit strange. But a real talking point for this car is the engine. Inline 3, turbocharged, a 1 litre engine making 80 horsepower. Quite a lot of turbo lag. Turbo spools up like 3,200 RPM, which isn't great. But that's just because early turbos and inline threes don't really go well together. Mechanical fuel injection. Unfortunately, unlike the Calculus, yeah, the tiny engine sort of counteracts the prestige bonus of the turbo. So yeah, not really any prestige gain there, and it's quite slow anyway, so it's sort of lost out there. Going for something more traditional would have probably helped it more. Anyway, it is quite light actually at 924 kilograms, and yeah, it's an alright put together car. Quite a lot of quality across it, just sort of +2, +3s, and yeah, in everywhere, and a +8 there, even though it doesn't have power steering. Fair enough, whatever helps, I suppose. But yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a bizarre car. Maybe they'll do well because it's low powered, I'm not sure, we'll have to see. From Puginis, we have the Roadmaster, which, yeah, looks to me more like a sort of 50s car, maybe early 60s or something. Lots of chrome, no plastic or anything. Yeah, to me at least, very much a 60s car. Yeah, early 60s at that. But yeah, styling wise, it's not period correct, but it does at least look good. Again, light truck monocoque, but as you can probably tell from these vents here, it is rear-engined, double wishbone front and rear, and another turbocharged engine, this time a big V8, one of the biggest we've had, one of the biggest engines full stop, and the most powerful one, 231 horsepower. 400 it would absolutely annihilate everything else, but yeah, slightly unoptimized turbo setup I suppose, but yeah, again, very good car. Intercooler limiting power, that's a bit odd, yeah. But yeah, and this car absolutely smashes everything else in terms of stats. It is, let me just get it up quickly. It has the highest comfort, the highest prestige, and the highest safety of any car here. So yeah, it does wipe the floor with the competition in that regard. So massive rear tyres, semi-slicks again, and the brakes don't really stop it, thanks to it literally not having any pads. Yeah, at least it's comfortable. But yeah, very soft suspension, tuned for comfort. I'd imagine it's going to be quite boaty. Well, actually, it's got fairly low roll angle. Maybe a bit bouncy though. We'll have to see. From Lonely Wolf, we have the Capaldi Geppetto WRC, and to be honest, I'm not sure why it's called WRC. It's more of a rock crawler thing. It's got solid axle suspension front and rear, and everything about this car just seems to be optimised for increasing that off-road stat with no care for anything else. So as a result, yeah, barely any comfort. Not zero though, I'll give it that. But yeah, suspension is set up really soft, hydropneumatic, and yeah, solid axle suspension, the space frame, which is kind of crazy. The engine is knocking, which is, yeah, big no-no, reliability and power. And oh, this is turbocharged. I didn't even realise it. Yeah, intercooler's limiting power then, and yeah, a very poor turbo setup. Turbine is massive. The compressor is about equal size, although it's slightly smaller, which again, yeah, not something you really want. And yeah, low AR, quite a poor turbo setup. Race intake, which, yeah, hurts reliability even more than it just knocking. And then -15 on the exhaust, which sort of creates a trend because then the trim is -15 on everything. Yeah, it's a very strange setup. Nothing about this car really makes too much sense. Apart from the brakes, I guess that's sort of set up for the snow. Possibly. I'm going to stay hopeful with this. Side note, almost 20 degrees of roll angle. This is going to be terrifying. From Conan, we have the Alpha Dave 6, which, yeah, as you can see from the front, definitely inspired by an Alpha. I do quite like this front grille setup. It's definitely, yeah, using a couple of different fixtures to give it quite a nice bit of detail there. I've just noticed the grille background's a mismatch there. That's going to annoy someone, I guarantee it. I'm not too bothered about it though, I'm not that nitpicky. Yeah, the front of the car's quite nice, the rest of it though, I just think's possibly a bit plain. To be honest, even the front there's not much going on down here. And the sides and back, this bit is, it's a nice bit of detail, but I think it's quite messy. So, yeah. Under the bonnet is a V6, 2.8 litres, and yeah, it makes a decent amount of power, 160 horsepower, which isn't bad. It uses DCOE carbs with a performance intake, and then just a single straight through muffler, supposed to make it nice and loud. Still, hopefully I'll at least sound good in BeamNG. Then the rest of this car seems to be built to be quite sporty still, and fun to drive. 21 sportiness, I believe that's one of the highest we've had so far. I haven't really been paying attention to sportiness, I'll be honest. But yeah, sporty, sports compound tyres, although still quite comfortable pads. And then, yeah, decently, well, quite a lot of camber, otherwise, yeah, actually a fairly comfortable setup, but standard springs. So yeah, it's be interesting to see. Maybe I'll make up some time in BeamNG by being quite sporty and fun to drive. We'll have to see. From Echo Waffle 8, we have the Aeros Badger Mark IV Deluxe E. Yeah, styling wise, this is a big American barge with some quite small tyres. Those look really undersized versus the body. But yeah, the styling, it's nothing too special. It's big and yeah, that's about it. Not a lot of detail to it, but not ugly at least. But yeah, there's just nothing to it. Underneath it is a proper American car, ladder chassis, solid axle rear, and the engine, big 6.1 litre V8, the biggest engine we've had here, and 170 horsepower isn't bad. Overall, yeah, just very big, lazy and cheap. Should hopefully be at least easy to drive, because that big mountain of torque could possibly be revved a bit higher. Although actually knowing push-rod heads, it could be valve float helping it. No, just keeping it limited there for some reason. Fortunately it's late 70s, so no crossplays here. But yeah, some really powerful brakes actually for some reason. Which, yeah, it could mean that they're a bit too easy to lock up. And yeah, otherwise fairly standard setup, fairly normal, quite stiff, fairly low roll angle. And yeah, there we go, there's all the cars entered here. So onto the scoring, and due to the amount of entries I got 24 entries. I decided to double the scoring, so now everything on a scale of 1 to 5 would be on a scale of 1 to 10, and the 1 to 10s are now on a scale of 1 to 20, just to sort of spread out the cows a bit more. Otherwise I'd be giving lots of cows the same score. Here it's just sort of spreads out the field a bit. Anyway, the winner so far, or the person in the lead at least, no winners yet, is Chipsgate. Person in the lead so far is Chipsgate with the Arai Montreal 2900i. Good looking car, and overall, yeah, decent. As I said, nothing bad about it really. Scored 72 points, followed by Puginus with 71 points, so quite a close battle for first there. BeamNG is really going to decide the winner between these two. And then followed, Puginus is followed by Armour Motors, 63 points. Then El Menduco on 60. Full list will be in the description. You can see my score rating, why I've done it, and then ask me in the comments why I've scored you like I have. And I expect salt. Anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry this has been so long. I'll try and hopefully edit it down. I've been recording for an hour now. And yeah, until next video, goodbye.